Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Everybody doing okay this Thursday? We've almost made it to the end of the week again. Yeah. Can't take it for granted. So today we are continuing on with this idea of situational approaches to leadership. And the idea of there being situational approaches to leadership means that we're starting to consider more than just things about the leader themselves. We're starting to consider followers. We're starting to consider characteristics of the task that people are doing. Today we're focusing, and it's kind of building off a little bit of LMX, which we talked about first, but this idea of people working together. And so we're talking about teams and groups, and really what the big difference is between those. Hopefully before today, y'all read the teams chapter in Northouse. My focus today is for us to mainly be able to understand if there is a difference between what we call a group and what we call a team. So that once y'all leave this class today, we're going to be able to use those words correctly, hopefully. We kind of have a tendency to call everything a team. And hopefully we learned today that not everything is. And so let's just be accurate, right, and what that means. So first I just want to know from y'all, maybe you remember some of it from your reading, or some of it you just kind of assume. What makes the difference, do you think, between a group and a team? How would you describe a group?
Just kind of a simulation. Never mind. A cluster of people.
So if a group is just a cluster of people, what would a team be?
An organized group of people.
What makes them organized? They've what?
They've probably known each other for a longer amount of time.
Organized group. I'm going to say maybe like with a established relationship. Okay. Any other differences you want to try to point out about a group and a team? A team does?
Yes.
Okay. And what about a group?
I think the group, I mean, this is just like what I think of, but a group is more like the followers are kind of delegating and choosing a leader. But when I think of a team, I feel like sports teams where they're kind of given a coach by somebody who's going to join the team or another doesn't need to.
Okay. Anybody else?
A group is like a, I hate to use the word in the definition, but like a group of people with like unestablished roles to each other.
So let's say unestablished roles. Okay. There was a PDF that I told y'all was uploaded in Canvas. Erin will pass it out for y'all just in a second. But I want us to go over it because it gives us really 5 main ways to compare and contrast groups and teams. And so one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what a team is. And so we're going to use kind of these 5 things to try to then describe what a group must be. If a group is the opposite or not the same, let's figure this out. So with a team, one thing we know about teams is that members are fully committed to common goals and missions that they develop together. So they are committed to common goals and a mission, and I'm going to just say decided together. So if that is a description of a team, when it comes to goals or mission, what must a group look like?
Uncommitted to no goals.
Might be a little far. Would you say,
Yeah.
like, you know, if you're working in a group for a class project, do you have a goal you're working on? But I would say, is there as strong of a commitment maybe? And is it a goal that maybe y'all decided together? Usually it's like an assigned goal, right? So for a group, we would say they're just working for a common goal. Be helpful if I can spell. Working for a common goal. And I'm going to just kind of draw these connections here so that you can see those are the things going. See the difference between a team and a group? They both are working on a common goal, but teams are just more committed, and oftentimes that goal or that mission is something that they decided on together. It wasn't a goal or a mission assigned to them. Now for a team, and this is one thing I don't want to say is wrong, but we said here that a team has a designated leader. We're going to shift this a little bit. Okay? We're going to say that a team is mutually accountable. What does that mean? If you are on a team, what does it mean to be mutually accountable to each other?
Everybody has an important role.
Absolutely. Everyone has an important role they can play. And if people aren't living up to that role, who holds each other accountable?
Each other.
Each other. So on a team or in a group, if they're not mutually accountable, who are the followers accountable to? Themselves? Who else might they be accountable to? If they're assigned a goal or something to do, who might be that person assigning it to them?
Oh, like
A manager?
yeah.
So let's think of some like practical examples here of this. You know you're working as a group when you're working on a project for class with people and someone's not pulling their part, and all you got to do is go to the teacher and just say, so-and-so is not doing their job. And the teacher says, okay, I won't give them the same grade. Does that create any need for the members of working together to be mutually accountable to each other? If everyone's going to get a different grade on the project, it's really the teacher holding them accountable, not each other. Okay? Third thing, for a team, we are going to see trust and collaboration. If those are two things that describe a team, trust and collaboration, what does a group probably function or look like?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
So if working in a team creates this culture of trust and collaboration, how would you describe the culture of working in a group?
It's probably more like individualized.
Very much more individualized. What happens sometimes when we're all looking out for ourselves, when we have that very individualistic approach to things?
Nothing new is brought to the table.
Nothing new is brought to the table, and what do people do? Clash. So there's often conflict because we have that individualistic approach, mainly because we're just working for a goal. It's not really something we're committed to, right? So we're going to say frequent conflict, and again, if the culture of a team is that things are trustworthy, there's a lot of collaboration, how would we describe the culture of a group? Like, one thing I like about trust is that when people trust each other, things pretty go calmly, right? What happens when there's no trust or a lack of trust? You have that conflict, but then things are kind of also wobbly, right? We would call that an unstable culture. Okay, so we don't know whose side people are on from week to week, right? We don't know who's going to pull their weight and who's not. There's just all these questions all the time, this instability. Is it unstable or unstable? Now that I say instability. Let's go with both. I am not an English major. So, okay. Another thing about a team. We have shared leadership. Okay, so this is where we're getting a little bit more on that democratic side of things, that in a team, we may not, and this is, I love that someone pointed out like sports, that we always have like a team captain. I want y'all to hold on to that thought. If we say that a description of a team is that there's shared leadership, should football teams be called football teams or football groups? What do y'all think?
Definitely group.
Interesting, right?
Well, wouldn't it be team because they are trying to mutually all be accountable?
Perhaps. If you've got a team that works pretty good together, right?
Yeah, I
I think
just,
ideally you would want a team, like that's the goal. Most of the time you probably just see groups.
well, I think our goal in like all aspects of like classrooms and just, I mean, everywhere in life, our goal is to be a team. That I think the easier route is like being a group.
Yeah.
Like I see that all the time.
So I don't know how many of y'all watched the football game Saturday. Well, was it? Sorry, we watched a lot of football on Saturday, so sometimes I get confused on like which game things actually happened. I think this may have actually been the Auburn game. Yeah, it was, because it was rough. It was awful. Georgia killed us. But one thing that made me think about this difference between a group and team, and this idea that on a team we want to have shared leadership, is that we do oftentimes say, well, yeah, we're the football team and we have a leader. It's our captain. But what happened in the game is like literally within the first like 5 minutes, one of our best defensive players on Auburn's team targeted someone and they were thrown out of the game. And the commentators were just saying how the coaches always describe this particular player as the captain of the defense. That like if he wasn't a captain on the team, he is for sure the captain of the defense, right? And I was like, that's shared leadership. That you want to have multiple people sharing this responsibility of leading and motivating each other, right? So to me, I was like, well, that looks a little bit more like a functioning team. They didn't necessarily function as a team on the field, unfortunately, that day. Again, it was rough. I just thought it was interesting. So if we have shared leadership as a team description, how would we describe a group? Who probably has the responsibility of leadership? One person, right? So one person is the leader. And again, thinking back to some of the stuff that we've talked about before, I think a little bit more along the sides of democratic leadership, a little bit more along the lines of autocratic leadership there. Okay? Last one I got for you. Any of y'all ever heard of the word synergy? What's it mean? What is synergy? When we say people have synergy,
They're like synced up, like mutually like empowering each other, like.
Yeah. Synced up, mutually empowering each other. It really describes this phenomenon of that when you put people together in a group, you know they're synergized when they're accomplishing more as a group than what they could accomplish by themselves individually. So there's a calculation we can use for this. What's 1 plus 1 plus 1?
4.
4. According to synergy, though, we would say when we add these 4 people together, it equals 5. How do I get that as my answer?
Because you all work just like a little bit harder.
A little bit. It's 4 people plus 1 whole group to make 5. Does that make sense? So 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5. Because you've got 4 people plus a group of people, you're accomplishing more than what you could do by yourself. Okay? If a team shows synergy, if they are empowering each other, if they're accomplishing more together than what they could by themselves individually, how would you describe a group? Are they going to accomplish their goals? They're going to accomplish what they set out to do, but it's not going to be above and beyond. So I'm going to just kind of say here, status quo. Okay? Those are the 5 main differences between groups and teams. What are some teams y'all have been a part of in the past? We've already talked a little bit about athletic teams.
Like planning committees.
Okay. Did y'all call yourself a team?
Yes.
Because we'll be like, hey, team. Da-da-da. Looking back, did y'all function as a team or did you function as a group?
Honestly, that was one of the more times I've been part of a team because we all had to we were planning this conference, and if we didn't all contribute equally, it wasn't going to be good. So I will say we were more of a team effort.
Okay. Anybody feel like you've been a part of something that was called a team, and now that we kind of delineate the difference between the two, you're like, that was really a group? How many of y'all been put in a team for a class project, and you're called teams? Bailey's raised her hand. Do you feel like it really was a team, or was it a group?
That was definitely a group.
How so?
For my nutrition class, it was mostly for because it was the sports area of it all, and so they're everyone's a team, and I did all of the work and presented all of the work, and everyone got the same grade because we're on a team. And I just wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah. What do you think it takes to take a group, when you know people are functioning truly as a group, to help them move to becoming a team? Hang on to that question, because we're going to do a case study today that focuses on an organization that really strives to have their organization function on that premise of working as teams versus just being people who work together in groups at their company. Who has shopped at Whole Foods before? Anybody in here? Okay, great. What do y'all know about Whole Foods? What are just some of your first impressions or thoughts about them? Just say it. I know what the stereotypes typically are. I'm not naive. I don't have a dog in a fight.
I'll give one. Granola cruncher.
So they're a little granola. Okay. Do y'all know what that means when you call someone granola? Okay. What else do you know about Whole Foods as a company? Or as a grocery store?
They definitely use they're overpricing a lot of stuff. I can go to Trader Joe's and get the same thing for way a lot cheaper and probably a lot better.
Yeah.
Um,
So it is expensive.
yeah.
Oh, it's like Sprouts.
Oh, it's like the mecca of sprouts.
Oh.
Like,
Okay, so
Twice
think
the
about
size.
this. Think about like California, like
LA.
LA, like
Hey
those
now.
moms.
Hey
now.
defend yourself, defend yourself.
Off in the corner.
Oh, are you from California?
The
My
good
bad.
part. It's not just LA, I promise.
Okay. My bad. But it truthfully, like I
feel that way about
high
Florida,
class,
too.
Like the moms go in there, like more fancier than Target moms. Does that make sense?
That's like the best description I've heard of Whole Foods ever. More fancier than Target mom.
There's like an area in Nashville called Brentwood where all the like country music stars and all them, yeah, they have a Whole Foods.
And like downtown Louisville, not downtown, it's a little out, but like in the richer end of Kentucky, they have a Whole Foods, and we used to go,
Mhm.
and then we got a Trader Joe's, and now we go to Trader Joe's.
So, I guess I want to dissect this name a little bit, like Whole Foods, like all foods, kind of whole, like what does it mean?
So their idea is that they don't sell as much processed food, that it's more natural. They'll say organic. They use the natural label
Yeah,
a
all
lot.
the buzzwords right
But they do sell a lot of fresh produce and vegetables as compared, and even meat, as compared to the rest of the products in their store. So that's where whole comes from. They're looking at nutrition.
Whole diet, okay.
They are a higher end grocery store chain, so they do only build near certain economic areas of cities. So you do have to have kind of a higher economic bracket in order to have a Whole Foods there. Are there any negative stereotypes that you have of Whole Foods? Maybe being above the Target mom might be, I don't know. I think it's a funny one, but again, we kind of go back to the idea of it being granola or crunchy.
The whole idea of like everything being organic.
Yeah.
Like that whole, like you said, like the buzzwords, it sounds good, it makes the customers want to buy it because it sounds like healthier,
It's
bigger price.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the first grocery store chains that really said, we're going to market solely on this idea of selling organic. A little bit to know about them, they don't just sell organic. So if you do go in there, they just label things more than a typical grocery store. And so you can go and buy conventional apples, but there's going to be as many organic apples available as there are conventional apples. They just are very like in your face about it versus other grocery stores you go in and you may pick up a bag of apples and not really have a clue kind of thing. So they also strive to purchase a lot locally. But here's just, I have a couple short videos just for us to watch to get to know a little bit more about them as a company.
Probably been a turkey farmer since birth. Hi, I'm Heidi Diestel, and I'm a fourth generation turkey farmer.
In conventional agriculture, there's a lot more emphasis placed on economics, basically getting cows to market as quickly as possible. For us, we choose to take some other things into consideration. We don't want to be growing all the turkeys in the world, we just want to grow the best. You can see on this commodity feed, the oil is just dripping out, and you kind of picture, okay, well, what would I want to be eating?
The turkeys eat a quarter soy-based meal, along with 3 different options: alfalfa, clay, and pellets. When we crave certain food, it's just like the turkey craving certain minerals. So they forage through that grain, and they find what they need that day.
We never feed any hormones, antibiotics, or chemicals to the turkeys. We don't feed DDGs, which are dry distillers grains from the ethanol industry. And by not changing that ration, when feed prices change, we're able to have something that customers can count on.
When I check the turkeys, I look to make sure that their feathers are really healthy and full, and looking at their eyes and making sure they're happy.
At our 5+ gap grading farm, we elected
Happy
to
turkey.
do a multi-species holistic grazing program.
I thought my chicken was happy and it died the next day. I still can't figure out what it did. It did. The sucker just died the next day. I'm so mad. I was like, we've had 2 die lately, and they're fine. They're not showing coccidiosis. Nothing. Just woke up in the morning and it was outside the coop. It was
Diversity of
dead.
species creates diversity
Imagine, like,
of
'cause we don't
microbiology,
spray to do it.
diversity of
We're
forage,
lazy.
and
Health
it really goes a long ways in
no idea.
the sustainability of our farm.
My family's been in the poultry business since the 20s, and my dad started in 49, and we took over from him in 80. As far as the business is concerned, we really haven't changed a whole lot since my dad, raised turkeys. There's not a lot of secrets here. Time, good feed, and a good environment, and you produce a good product. It's about that simple.
Our relationship with Whole Foods goes back to the 80s when my parents started out, and Whole Foods had 2 stores, and so we've really grown with Whole Foods.
They support us through all of our farming practices and finding new ways to attain those old-fashioned values.
You see the sustainability going on, not just in the farm itself, and the land, but you're seeing it in the family traditions of different generations taking over farms, raising that standard, raising that bar, and figuring out what's best for the environment, the ranching, and the longevity of everything.
Everybody, every day, gets to vote with their food dollars. You get to choose which system do you want to support.
When Dan calls up at Thanksgiving and says, that turkey is great, it's one of the best ones here, that's pretty rewarding. And that's worth keeping it all going for us.
So that's a little bit about one of the producers that works with Whole Foods. And so that's kind of one of their big things is that they try to be very connected. They say with where they're getting their products from, who the farmers are, you name it. So a lot of people may just grow their produce or raise their animals specifically to sell to Whole Foods. Something to think about. Here's a little bit more about working there. Any of y'all ever worked at a grocery store before? No? Oh, yeah? What was it? Where did you work and what was it like?
I worked at Walmart.
Oh, that's probably the biggest one to contrast with that. What was that like?
I did the online grocery pickup, so I just picked groceries one day.
Okay. Be interested to see what you think after watching these next 2 videos.
The best part about working for Whole Foods Market is...
The best thing about working for Whole Foods Market is...
So I think the best thing about working for Whole Foods Market is either the products that I get to work with or the people that I get to help. It's totally the ability to come as yourself.
The people are awesome, the products are top notch, and the guests are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people.
The best part about working for Whole Foods Market is you get to work with a company that makes a difference.
All the happy people are going to help.
The food, the people, and the culture. Great thing.
They empower you to just do what you can be the best at.
Just having a lot of opportunity to do fun things with fun people and make a career out of it.
The best thing about working at Whole Foods Market is the growth opportunity.
I get to meet the local vendors that come in and all their food and their hard work.
I'd say it's honor. Freedom of expression. You can be yourself. You're not just another employee.
The people, right? We have a lot of fun here. It's a great place to work. Helping people. That's a good part for me.
The best part about working at Whole Foods Market is the people. It's just a really great environment to work in all the time. Every day.
It's an adventure every day. So I'm very proud to work for Whole Foods Market.
So they obviously picked a lot of people that are happy to work there. But let's see, when they said that you're allowed to be yourself at Whole Foods, what does that really mean? One thing that at Walmart, just a question, working there, did you have requirements about what you couldn't wear to work, stuff like that?
There's like an established dress code basically, like it is like you can wear like skinny jeans, but they can't have any like rips or anything around, closed fit shoes, just like
I also worked at Walmart. It sucked.
it's trash.
It's the worst. Management, trash.
Yeah. Some of the old ladies, trash.
Yeah.
The old ladies who get you, I'm telling
The
you.
poor old
Like, they're,
ladies.
like super nice and go to the log, and then you have the old ladies just like nagging at you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't make your day any better.
Bless. But, I think about this idea of like whether you can be yourself at work or not. Like one of the extremes I think of is Disney, shockingly. So I grew up about an hour from Disney, so I had a lot of friends that like that was their high school job or stuff like that. You couldn't have your nails painted. You couldn't dye your hair like different colors. Like if you dyed your hair, it had to be what they considered a normal color of hair. Your makeup couldn't be too extreme. Again, like if you've ever been to Disney, dress code is a big deal depending on where you work. Like you get a uniform and you like fit it like very much so. And I never realized that for a company that's so creative and imaginative, they don't allow you to be if you work at the park. Let's see what it's like at Whole Foods.
Austin is such a rich, diverse community with so much culture. We're looking to reflect that culture in our stores. Our team members definitely reflect that culture.
Team member happiness and excellence is a core value here at Whole Foods.
That's one of the reasons that I've stayed here is it actually does mean something.
I am looking for people who are passionate about food. I get a lot of chefs who apply.
Everyone here is passionate about food. If they're not when they start, they finish that way.
Empowerment is a word that's thrown around a lot, and Whole Foods actually lives it.
There have been tons of team members that I have seen surpass me that have been awesome, that I've helped mentor and train and just develop. So yes, here at Whole Foods, it's a wonderful thing that you get to be empowered.
I think one of the things that makes Whole Foods Market unique is the individual expression that we're allowed.
You're able to be yourself and actually be happy.
They want me to be me.
There's no two team members that look alike by any means.
We are all multifaceted. We have all different types of passions.
There's people from Mexico, from Germany, from Guatemala.
Respecting of diversity sort of comes natural to this environment. We just know to be respectful of one another.
Caring about our local community, our environment is like number one in my book.
We feel like we have responsibility to our environment.
Whole trade is our own stamp on our own standards, which often can be higher than the fair trade standards. We're giving higher wages and good working conditions to people no matter what country they live in, whether the laws are set up like that for them or not to protect them, that those are the values that we stand by.
I'm really proud to work at Whole Foods Market because we love our small producers. We have a local producer loan program that gives them an opportunity to take out a loan so they can grow their business with us.
I believe in Whole Planet. It's something that when it first came out, I really got behind.
I have first-hand experience with Whole Planet Foundation. Last summer I actually went to Peru and saw the process of the women getting the microloans.
We're showing a commitment to the planet that way, and that's pretty rare in today's corporate America.
Here in the store, it's a great little melting pot. Our team members are from all over the world. We've got different languages, different cultures.
Every ethnicity, there's every sexual orientation. I mean, it is so culturally rich.
The culture that we have here at Whole Foods means a lot to me. It's a great place for me to learn and grow and find out what I want to do and how I want to be in this world.
So it didn't look like they quite had uniforms, right? Anybody pick up on any type of uniform? No, people can kind of be themselves. They don't have ton of requirements. So, you know, the reason I show this video is for y'all to kind of understand what are some of the things behind this culture that Whole Foods has created. Because one of the things that separates a team from a group is what is the culture? Is it trustworthy and collaborative? Or is it more just one where there's kind of conflict and people aren't always button heads and the culture's unstable? And so those may seem like little things, letting people to wear what they want to work, but those things contribute to how a culture is created in an organization. So Erin and I are going to pass out a little 1 page, well, it's like 1.5 pages, little case study. And then we also have, I printed out the PDF that's in Canvas in case you haven't. I'll pass that behind you. That shows, again, kind of those differences between a group and a team. This is a little bit more about Whole Foods, and again, the specifics on how this company runs. I want y'all to read through it, and if you see something that reminds you of a characteristic of a group, I want you to underline it. if you see something that reminds you of a characteristic of a team, circle it. Because that's what we're going to discuss from this case study today is, what about Whole Foods looks like a group, and what about Whole Foods makes it look like a team? Shouldn't take you too long to read through this case study. So again, underline the things that look like a group, circle the things that look like a team. This thing hates when I stand behind this podium, doesn't it? It looks like most people are wrapped up reading the article. First off, what are some things that you're like, huh? It might be kind of cool to work for Whole Foods. What were some things you liked about their policies or their core values?
I really like how like the team decides whom to hire, whether to retain members, and like what products it carries. Like I think that really encourages like people that like have a food science background or like really passionate about cooking to like feel interested to work at something like a chain grocery store.
Yeah, so that is one really cool thing. Again, if you haven't ever been in a Whole Foods, like beyond just being able to go and buy groceries, like they usually have, like people go there to eat lunch sometimes. Like they have a ton of fresh food that you could buy. They usually sometimes have like a pizza kitchen. And so when they say like chefs apply to work here, they do, because they're not just given a menu of what they have to cook. They're able to develop that menu, and they like the company culture. So yeah, there's a lot of autonomy among the departments. What else do you like?
I like having the CEO in the stores, they talk about what he wears. Because I think like, I mean, we're all talking about how there's like free dress, but we're kind of all raised in a culture of like how you should look when you go to work. And so I think having like a CEO of a company who's that comfortable kind of helps make you like realize how serious they are about wearing what you want and being your own person. So I think that's just important that that's how he visits the stores and really like he puts that across to his team members too.
Yeah. It's so interesting what we do determine like professional dress to be or not to be. And then beyond just what do we consider it to be, but why? I don't know, that's something I struggle with, because it's at the same time I want to be like this anarchist that's like, I'm not going to, do everything everyone says. So I feel like today wearing jeans to work is a really rebellious moment for me, because there are some people.
Super cute today. I almost said that when you came in.
There are some faculty who think you should be, if you're teaching, if you're a male, you're in a coat and tie. If you're a woman, you are in business attire. And I'm like, I just want to be comfortable. Like, does it really matter what I teach if class is going good? Struggle with that. But at the same time, too, I have never worn pants to church. Ever. My Nana's not dead yet, but if she were, she'd roll over in her grave. Like there are things that like we're just kind of culturally taught to think about stuff, so I struggle with that. But I always think that's interesting. I will never forget my high school AP government class. Adam Putnam was at the time 33, which is weird to think about because I thought he was so old at the time. But he was running for House of Representatives for the United States Congress. And he had been in the Florida House of Representatives, and he was first elected when he was 26 years old. And he was from my home county. His family, big citrus family, like kind of a big part of our Farm Bureau. So it was like, oh, Adam Putnam's coming to class. Like he happened to be in town from DC that week, whatever. And he showed up to our class on that Friday in jeans and a Columbia shirt and sat and talked with us sitting on a desk for 4 hours. And I just remember being like, he's a normal human being. I expected him to be in like this coat and tie looking very, legislative or whatever. But no, he was just chill, right? And so there is something about dress right and like having people in leadership roles feel normal. I would agree with that. Anything else that was interesting to you? That you're like, I could get behind this with it being a company policy anywhere?
I liked the Declaration of Interdependence.
Oh, how so?
All of that.
Yeah. What did you like about it, Bailey?
I liked how it made sure, making sure that customers and team members were happy. It made sure, the excellence level was met.
Yeah. And that even ties into the idea of if someone gets someone's raise or salary isn't going to just be because of their own good works at the job. It has to be a reflection of the team as a whole. So there is this mutual accountability, right? Not only are we going to be accountable to each other because we want to be a team, but ain't none of us getting further ahead if one of us sucks, right? So we have this mutual accountability to pull each other along to be sure everyone's doing well. What do y'all think? This is one that I think is fascinating. It's on the back, the top. There's a salary cap. Limits the salary of any team member to 14 times the average total compensation of all full-time team members. What that essentially means is no one in that department or in that store can make more than 14 times the lowest paying person there. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think the outcomes of a policy like that are?
I think it just like reflects your like personal politics of like democracy and like I don't know. I think you could look at it and be like, well, if a person's working really hard, like they deserve to get compensated for how hard they're working. Or you could look at it and be like, well, that's fair. Like no one should be getting paid really high in comparison to someone else and like how they're like doing well in their position just because your position's different.
So let's say that like the lowest salary at Whole Foods, because they do tend to try to hire like full-time people, they offer benefits, stuff like that. Say it's baseline, and we'll go with a low number, $30,000. What is 14 times 30,000? So like if the lowest paid employee makes 30,000, what's the highest someone can potentially earn working for them? Anyone got a calculator out?
Working on it. So 30,000
times 14.
420,000.
420,000. Do y'all think that's a good salary?
Pretty good.
Pretty decent.
Pretty attractive.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I feel that it's kind of hypocritical to an extent if Mackey's making the decision, because the guy's worth over 70 billion, and for him to put a cap on someone's salary like that, I mean, if I was looking at that guy saying, hey, you know, yeah, you invented the company, you're in charge of this, but you're putting a cap on what I could be and what I could make. I mean, I feel like that's a little unfair.
So he's worth, is that what his salary is? So there's a difference between someone's net worth and what their salary is.
But is he really putting a cap on? Because truthfully, they could give the lowest person a raise as well, and then the higher person could get a raise as well. So
Yeah.
truthfully, there's no true cap.
So he falls under that policy. It applies to anyone who works. So his annual salary is still not going to be 14 times more than team members. His net worth, though, comes from the fact that he does own these buildings, the company, all of that kind of stuff. So we do have to kind of separate that out. But I can see where you say that. I will say one criticism people will say is like, well, people aren't going to be motivated to work hard but think about it. Again, it's that team concept. It's not saying you can't want to earn more money. It just means we're all going to work towards wanting to earn more money together. So it's this idea of instead of leaving someone here and everybody just kind of doing this, or one person doing that, it's saying, I want to make more money, so I'm going to kind of institute and do this in a way where we're all going to make more money. It's kind of like rising together is that thought behind it.
I just think I like the idea of like team members deciding like who to hire, who to like, you know, working together for this common goal of having a raise, but I almost think like you could like get super like-minded people like this, I don't know.
You could.
I feel like it could be really tricky.
Yeah. So you definitely have to have an organization that's committed to inclusion.
Yeah.
Because we all have personal biases and we tend to gravitate towards people like us. Anyway, so yeah, like you definitely have to have that as kind of a commitment and something that you're constantly talking about. If you don't talk about personal biases, the more likely something like that is to happen in any organization. I would agree with that. So what to y'all sticks out as something that makes Whole Foods look like they're functioning as a group? Anything you saw there? Based off of this article, it's a little hard to find. What about team stuff? Did you see any of these concepts mentioned throughout what they do?
On the back, it talks about like how we were just talking about how their raises are tied to the team, and so no one can get a raise like by themselves, but it's going to be like
everyone's gonna get like a raise at the same time. So it's like they're mutually accountable for each other, making sure they're all doing their job, so
Yeah.
they all get the raise.
Absolutely. Anything else? Anything about trust and collaboration?
I think like whenever it talks about like the group and everything, it says accountable to a manager and all that. And it's something that like stuck out, it said Matthew's like hardly a manager at all, you know?
Uh-huh.
So I think that's something that also stuck out, but it also talks about how the basic decision-making power at Whole Foods rests with the teams in each department, and like who to hire, and like what products to carry, but also like dealing with the raises and like where to go from there.
Yeah. So it is interesting. They say if you kind of go from one to other, there's some consistency when it comes to stuff, but it really is on a store individual level, a department individual level who makes those decisions. I had a friend back home that their mom was a buyer for Publix supermarkets, and it functioned very different. Like she was in charge of deciding what went on the shelves for all Publixes in her region, which is essentially from South Carolina down to Florida over to, I think at that time it would have been Alabama. I don't think Mississippi had one yet. But multiple states, she literally had like, depending on what their product inventory was and who was marketing to Publix, she would make those decisions. And Whole Foods doesn't function that way. They have buyers that help give information to these local departments. I actually met a lady in an airport one time that was a buyer for Whole Foods. So I got to have this weird conversation with her. Some weird like that. But they ultimately, again, they leave that decision up to the local departments there. It's kind of interesting. Anything else that stood out to you about teams in Whole Foods? Y'all have worked at Walmart, and I don't want to sound like we're dissing Walmart today.
Oh, we can just.
But how does this compare to working at Walmart? Do you feel like there's, you say you work as groups at Walmart or work as teams, and why?
For the most part, it was groups. I think I worked at one of the better Walmarts, I guess, because I didn't hate it that bad. But they, like, I did hear that, like, my Walmart had, like, more of the same, like, common goals. Like, they made sure, like, their employees, like, knew what those goals were, and they always, like, challenged us to become better. So, like, my online grocery team was, like, one of the best ones. And so we worked more as a team, I think. But overall, it's like Walmart as a whole, we did this group.
Yeah. So there are a lot of organizations that, again, they may not agree with all the premises behind what Whole Food does or why they market certain way they do. You know, they may not even have the same dietary beliefs, perhaps, as Mackie does, right? It says in there that he's a vegan, which is interesting, and his store still sells meat. Just a thought. But they have looked at this idea of what does a team culture and organization really look like. And we're starting to see a lot of other organizations pick up on that and try to start implementing and shifting that culture. So today, really, this was the goal, was to just look at an organization that is a positive reflection. Again, I'm not telling y'all to go shop at Whole Foods. I don't shop at Whole Foods. But they are a good company example of how a team culture can be created. To get credit for your case study today, if you will just write your name on a sheet of paper, or if you want to write it on that Whole Foods sheet, turn that into Erin. She'll make sure you get credit for the case study today. If you do turn in the worksheet and you're like, I want to keep this article or whatever, it is in Canvas, so you can print it back out from there. All right, no quiz today. Over the weekend, we're just going to chat about followership next week. So y'all have a good weekend, and I will see y'all on Tuesday.